Good evening. I'm going to be honest with you. Up until this moment right here, I've only ever shared my speaking skills with corporate America. And when I initially decided to audition for the speaker series this evening, I had no idea what I was going to talk about. I mean, how do you take a topic like unconditional love, pick one aspect of that topic, and then talk about it for 10 minutes? Seemingly impossible. But I had this desire, this voice, this nudge inside of me encouraging me to do it. So I did probably the scariest thing I've ever done in my adult life, and I sent an email requesting an audition space, knowing I had nothing. Nothing. But you know, it's funny how the universe will speak to you if you're willing to listen. So a few days later, scrolling through social media, and I come across a story that sparks an idea. So this evening, I'd like to share with you 2 stories of heroism. The first story is about April Jones. Now, last year in August, she came home from work, and she had been having a pretty bad day. And as she often does, she decided to take a walk around a retention pond near her home to kind of shake off the bad day she had been having. And as she got done with her normal 1-mile walk, something inside of her encouraged her to do a second mile. And it was during that second mile that April came across a little boy who is playing precariously close to the retention pond. Now, being a mother herself, of course, immediately she starts yelling out words of caution to the little boy, and no sooner had those words left her mouth than she sees this little boy fall into the water. So, of course, she immediately starts running there, and as she gets closer, she realizes this little boy, he doesn't know how to swim. His arms are flailing, his head is bobbing above and below the water, and she knows it's only moments before he's going to go under. So, of course, she runs, she jumps in, is able to reach the little boy and bring him back to shore. Now, I think we can probably all agree that in that same situation, we would do the same thing. But what makes April a hero is that April doesn't know how to swim. And she had no idea at the moment that she ran and jumped into that water how deep it was going to be. Later, when she was being interviewed by the local news channel, they asked her, "Why did you do that?" And she replied, "I just panicked. I didn't even think about it. I just jumped in." Now, the second story I'd like to share with you, you might actually be familiar with because this happened recently. This story is about Wyatt, Dylan, Seth, and Nick. And just this past July, they were hanging around outside, and they started to smell smoke. So, of course, being curious young men that they were, they decided to do a little investigative reporting, and they started walking down the street to see if they could determine where the smoke's coming from. So, of course, as they're walking down the street, they come across a house that's on fire. Now, of course, they have no idea if there's anybody in the house at this point, but there's a house that's on fire, right? So they immediately all jump to and leap to action. 2 of the young men decided that they were going to try to gain entrance into the home using the front and the back door. The 3rd young man pulls out a cell phone to call 911 fire rescue, and the 4th young man runs to the nearest neighbor's house looking for an axe to maybe help them get into the house a little easier. Nick was the first person to gain entry into the home. Now, by this point, the house is filled with smoke. And of course, Nick had never been there before, so he had no idea what the layout of the house was, but that didn't matter. He runs into the home looking for someone, anyone that needs help. Eventually, he comes across Catherine, who is clearly disoriented, simply standing in her hallway, not knowing what to do. So, of course, he walks up to her, picks her up, and carries her out. Clearly, April and Nick, they were out of their minds when they did these things. And what I mean by that is that they were acting instinctively. They weren't thinking about their decisions. I mean, Nick wasn't standing there making a list of pros and cons on whether or not we should run into a burning building, right? No. These people simply saw individuals in peril, and they leapt to action to help them. I believe that God lives inside of us, not in some of us, in all of us. And when we are tied to our bodies, our ego maintains control of our decisions, and our ego wants to live. I mean, if you think about it, the main purpose of the ego is preservation of self, right? So if you were to ask your mind or your body, hey, do you think it's a good idea to run into a burning building? They're going, no. We're going to go ahead and pass on that, right? But your soul, the part of you that is in communion with God and has access to God's wisdom, your soul will propel you into that fire every time. I believe that when we act out of our minds, that when we act instinctively, we are tapping into that wisdom and into our own divinity. The problem is that we allow our mind to override our instincts. We allow our ego to make our decisions for us. And when our ego makes those decisions, they are always going to be based in judgments. Have you ever been in a situation where you're walking down the street and up ahead you see a homeless man begging for money, and immediately you think about that $5 bill that you have in your pocket? But as you walk closer, your mind starts to convince you that he's not worthy. I mean, look at him. Look how dirty he is. He's lazy. If he would just get up, clean himself up, he could probably find a job. For that matter, I wouldn't be surprised if he lost his last job because of drug and alcohol. If I give him my $5, he's just going to go buy booze with it. Right? All of these thoughts are in your brain trying to convince you that he is not worthy of that $5 bill. The thing is your ego is self-serving. And it will always try to convince you that you are more important than them, that your needs are more important than their needs, and that is your $5. You worked for that $5. I mean, what if you need that later? You know, maybe you're going to get thirsty. But your soul knows the truth that we are all one. And what you do for one of us, you do for all of us. So what do I think is unconditional love? I believe that unconditional love is our nature. It is the essence of who we are. It is who we are when we're not even thinking about it. And when we allow our ego to live our lives and to make our decisions for us, we are literally defying our nature. What we need to learn how to do is to reconnect to that little voice, that quiet little voice that's inside of us, that quite frankly is probably being drowned out by the insistence of the ego. But if you can find that little voice and tune into it and listen to it, it will whisper to you the truth. And the truth is, our job is to love one another without stopping to inquire whether or not they are worthy. Thank you.